I had actually done a couple of those Alfred Hitchcock shows, his weekly series, but I had never met the man. And he had seen me, I believe, in the Children's Hour. So he requested meeting me, so I went over. And I must have been in his office for at least an hour. He found out that I was born in Bristol, England, and he goes, "Oh, yes, well, that's where the best wine cellars are." And so he proceeded to tell me the best wines to buy and what the best wine cellar was in a distributor and all of this. And he told me how to cook a steak. And he says you have to pull it out before it is fully cooked because it will continue to cook. These things, of course, I have applied in later years, but at the time I was 11 or 12. So I had no idea. I thought, what odd conversation. But he was very nice to me. He was great. Suzanne, she decided that, I don't know whether it was because she wanted to play Tippi's part or not, because her character was always sort of that little bit of jealousy that went on because she was in love with Mitch. So she borrowed a blonde wig, and she came out with a blonde wig on, and she says, "Well, can't I do the role?" I mean, she came out and she played the whole day like this with this blonde wig on. She was very fun. She was a good spirit and a good sense of gung-ho. She's very funny. I had, which I hadn't expected, it was a surprise birthday party. I had my 13th birthday while doing the birds. All of a sudden, here was this enormous cake, and everybody sang, and the whole crew stopped, and Jessica gave me a wonderful sweater, which I still have someplace. And Tippi gave me lovebirds. And Hitchcock took out a piece of board and a crayon and wrote, "To the woman I love, Veronica." And then he proceeded to draw his face and signed his name on it. And he handed that to me. I mean, that's great. And I still have it, and I had it framed, and so that was my present from him.
And there was a trained gull called Charlie who they would wire their beaks so that they, wouldn't hurt anybody.
He was on long wires, and his beak had been bound with some sort of tape, and his claws, so that if he actually did hit me or anything, because I think I had seed in my hair so that he would dive down to me, then he wouldn't hurt. But the string broke, and he started going out to the bay.
There were very low tides at Bodega Bay, and these sand flats stretched for miles. And it was nothing to see one of these poor wranglers running after a seagull that was flopping along just 6 feet ahead of him for miles.
And they couldn't get Charlie back in again. And poor Charlie with the beak, wired up. They thought, what with this poor thing, what's going to happen? But they did. He did come in.
The SPCA was on the set a lot. And the script girl actually started to be a great protector of these birds. And they actually built an aviary onto the set for birds that had been hurt or injured, and she would take care of them.
They had to net the whole set.
The inside of the house was inside yet another canvas house, so that when all these damn birds got out, which they would, of course, the poor wranglers could catch them.
And then the camera would poke through a hole, and they had crates in the back of the chimney with these, pull-out things. And then they would pull them out, and the birds would swoop down. Ray Berwick, who was the main handler, he had a crow, or a raven, I believe he was, named Buddy. And Buddy was trained, and so he was sort of like the leader. He could tell him when to peck your hand and do things like that.
There was one named Buddy, very beautiful raven, who I became friends with. In fact, he was so nice he couldn't even be in the movie. He was so sweet. And he'd come hopping into my dressing room on the set, and he'd hop up on my dressing table, and he was just fun. It was just, they're so smart.
They had these bird puppets that would swoop down on us. And when we were on the treadmill, you were desperate to stay in the front of the pack. Because if you were the one to go down, you were like a bowling pin. And you just, boom, you were off. And they had a huge mat set up on the other end. And they kept getting faster and faster with this treadmill. We were running like little maniacs. I mean, down, phew, everybody be wiped out. A lot of those birds were cardboard cutouts and sort of stuffed birds that were all put on the wires, and they just kept adding to them and adding to them. And I asked him, I said, ever the curious child, I asked him, I said, well, isn't it going to look fake on camera? And he says, no, because he interspersed real birds with them. And he says, your eye, it's the illusion. You see movement from one, you assume that they're all moving. And it's absolutely true. You sit there and you watch that movie and you could swear that they're all moving just by interspersing live ones here and there. I mean, he had so many things. I just kept asking questions, and he never seemed to mind answering them either.
Well, in order to help us all have the same degree of emotion, Hitch had a drummer come in. And he started a drum roll very, very softly, you know, that we would hear. And then it got louder and louder and louder. In fact, all of us were almost saying, stop it, you know, just to hearing the drum roll, which was very effective.
So he sort of built up anxiety levels a bit, you know, and he would just show you the blocking of where you would be, and then just took the reactions as they came. They had hammer heads, you know, with birds' heads on them, and they would have these, like, hand puppets and all sorts of things that had bird heads on so that they could control them and stuff. And those were heads on hammers, and then they just had the prop people standing behind just beating the door so it would actually get the actual looking like it was ripping through. Otherwise, it wouldn't have looked, I think, like wood splitting.
Oh, poor thing.
So the scene, actually, when he brings her down the stairs, that was a double because Tippi was in the hospital from exhaustion. So he carries this other lady down the stairs. And then I'm sure he went back later and did insert shots of her face.
Opening a door when there's no door. This was so typical of Hitch, because this is film. This is the illusion of movie making. You know, and indeed I had to reach off camera and open a door that wasn't there. So when I opened the door, indeed, the light came on as if the daylight was streaming in the door. And nobody in the world can say there wasn't a door there.
I said, well, aren't you going to know that there's no door there? And he says, but how would I be able to see you? And he said that it's all done with light. And it's true. I mean, Rod Taylor goes like this, and he pulls it, and the shadow hits it. Nobody knows there is not a door there. He said to me, that's the magic of movies. And I mean, it's like, that was exciting. I mean, and I've never forgotten that, because it is. Movies are magic, and I think that's what made Hitchcock so special. You know, because birds are so common, I mean, you see them all the time. You think of them as basically being your friends. But after doing the birds, yes, you did start looking at birds a lot differently. I've never seen so many crows on our front yard as... I never knew there were that many of them until after doing this movie. And you started looking at them a lot differently.